you to litigation? Have you ever imagined in the course of career you would end up working with royalty and billion-dollar projects?
I think I always wanted to be a lawyer ever since I was very young.
How do you manage to keep calm when hundreds of millions are at stake?
Well, firstly, it's not your money.
When you prepare for arbitration, do you think more like a chess player or poker player?
It has to be chess.
So lawyers are often portrayed as either sharks or saints. What would your clients say you are?
Probably a saint with machinery.
What advice would you give to law students in emerging markets like in Uzbekistan who dream of making it on the global stage?
You need to get international experience.
Are you telling us that Suits is BS?
The only character of Suits that is even close to reality is the Lewis Linton character.
How do you want to be remembered?
He was an ethical lawyer, but he was a very, very effective lawyer.
It was actually fabulous exposure to you, to your personality, and some of the insights of yours that you shared.
That's kind of interesting, actually.
Yeah, impressive. Greetings, everyone. My name is Shukran. I'm partner and head of banking finance practice at Costa Legal, law firm based in Tashkent. But here today, I'm in London speaking with James. James, thank you very much for agreeing to speak to me. James, as a way of introduction, is a presiding partner of Joseph Hage, Aaronson and Bremen law firm and head of construction litigation and arbitration practice. He has over 20 years of experience in the world's largest and most complex construction projects and most difficult disputes. I'm sure, James, you would have a lot of interesting things to share with us today. So, James, I have a few questions for you. So, if you don't mind, why don't we start you telling us briefly about your education background and career?
Well, thank you, Shukran. I mean, obviously he said briefly, so I'm going to struggle with that. In terms of, I sort of originally qualified in Australia. I worked there in a firm in Brisbane, and I was very fortunate to do some overseas work. And about 1 year qualified, this was the 1990s, I was approached by Sherman Sterling to go and work for them. And I thought, well, maybe I should do that. And I had a look. And then effectively, I decided not to just go and work for one firm. So a bunch of different firms gave me offers from all over the world, Paris, London, other places. And I decided to go and to join White & Case. I joined White & Case in London in the early 2000s, in that period 2002 to 2007, which was something of a boom. And I worked all over the world in that period of time, very exciting period of growth for that firm. There were only two real, one senior partner and two associates at the time. And one of them became a partner there, and I was an associate. And that team grew and that firm grew. And then about 6 years after that, I thought I would change direction, and I went to a small city firm called Max Winward, or Winward Fearon as it then was, and about 20 partners did domestic construction. I brought my practice. I didn't expect clients to come. Then went on. That didn't work because they were not really able to deal with the sort of intensity of the practice that I had, but they were very nice people. And then I moved to an American firm, King & Spalding, because I thought, well, that's better. I don't want to be in a New York firm again. I wanted to be perhaps a softer southern firm. But that again was a startup in London at that time. I was there for about 2.5 years. I didn't mind that, but it was very lonely in the sense of sometimes I was the only person there. And it was a very turbulent time, 2007, 2008, in London with the financial crisis. I was busy for disputes, but no one else really was. And as a function of that, maybe more than anything else, I thought I'd go to Herbert Smith because they were a firm that was a good firm that approached me. I went to Herbert Smith. I stayed there for some time. I rose to the top of the equity there, and I liked the firm. The firm did a merger, and again, I wasn't sure that was a good idea for them personally. I thought that they had a very special thing in Herbert Smith, and the larger firm was a very different beast. And a number of people had been leaving Herbert Smith to go to Quinn Emanuel at that time. They sort of raided us, they raided A&O. And I was approached about them. I was a bit reticent. I joined them about 9 years ago, brought my team from Herbert Smith, and we're all together today still. I was at Quinn then for about 9 years, and then about a month ago joined a new firm directly across the road, was just mentioned as presiding partner, so very much is a great firm, but it's my firm, and I've never really had that before. So that's not short, but it's an answer.
Excellent, quite comprehensive. But you've indeed built a truly global legal career, James. And what drew you to litigation? And have you ever imagined in the course of career you would end up working with royalty and billion-dollar projects?
Well, probably. I think I always wanted to be a lawyer ever since I was very young, and I think this is really the only job that I can do, certainly the only job I can do that pays well. And I thought about academia and other things, and regrettably that doesn't pay well. So I'd always thought I would do this, actually, ever since I was probably 10 years old. I thought this is exactly what I would be doing. And what drew me to international work? I think it was a function of where I had been at the time when I was a very young article clerk and a very junior solicitor. I was doing a lot of mining work in remote places and flying out all over that country, and also some dredging work in other countries. And then when I went to White & Case, it was my first matter. They sent me to Mexico for 9 months, and I by myself to work out what to do a multi-billion-dollar case, which was a very, very intense experience. Came back, then they sent me to Georgia, and then I went to Beijing, and then I was just constantly moving. And it was always very challenging and very interesting and very different and very pressurized. And I sort of somehow became addicted to that, which is probably unhealthy. And it's sort of continued. And if you are in places where there are very few lawyers of any type, let alone international lawyers, quite quickly you meet the people who are going to be in charge or who are in charge. And over time you develop friendships with those people, and they rise as time passes to positions of great authority. And you have relationships with them that go back decades, and personal relationships, not just work relationships. And so that's helped my career hugely. The only reason I've been successful is because of the loyalty of my clients. As you've just heard, I've moved firms, but I still act for people I acted for in 2002. In fact, almost all the people I acted for, not all of them, but almost all of them, are the same people I was acting for 20 years ago as a junior lawyer. And that is just luck and being in the right place at the right time, and developing a relationship of trust with those people.
Excellent, thank you. But look, for the last when we've been talking like for 50 minutes or so, so you seem to me a very calm person. So look, on the one hand, you're involved in disputes where it's a huge stake at hand, right? Several hundred millions, if not $1 billion. How do you manage to keep calm when hundreds of millions are at stake?
Well, firstly, it's not your money. And okay. Secondly, all cases have bad parts and good parts. The key is working out what the bad parts are first, and working out what your countermeasures are for the bad parts.
Yeah.
And if you do that well, when you prepare for a case, just if you're arguing it as counsel, and I'd probably do half of that, and I argue as counsel probably half the time. You prepare, and you'll reach a certain time when you're prepared that you know you can't do any more. Right? You've tested everything. You know the trial bundle, back to front. Every document's in your head. You might have not slept for 3 weeks, but you know. And this incredible calmness comes over you. Before that, you're very stressed, but no one sees that. You're in a room like this, working all night, everywhere, and then you get to a point where you know, I'm good. And you sit there and you just think, when you open, of course when you're open on the first day, it's a little bit of stress, but usually you go, there's no more that I can do. I'm as prepared as I can be. Yeah. There is nothing in front of me that I'm not going to expect. And every now and then, clients lie to you, or the other side has evidence you haven't seen, and you have to deal with that. But broadly, you feel, I have the weight of, I know what I'm going to do. As Sun Tzu says, every battle's won before it's ever fought. That is exactly what you should do. And that's why you're able to be calm. But also, your client pays you to be calm. This can often be the most personal thing to do. And you have to be the person who is saying, well, that's fine. Yes, it's terrible, but there's no point crying over that. We need to right now decide what we're going to do. So you're captain of the ship, and when the ship's in trouble, the captain's got to be calm. So they're paying you for that.
Yeah.
And even when you're under intense pressure, you should never, ever, ever let your client see that, because they are expecting you to calm them down. You are. I often say you're a stress surrogate. They are very stressed.
Mm-hmm.
They would like to give their stress to you
Yeah.
and make that stress go away.
Okay.
But if you exhibit that stress and look really stressed,
Mm-hmm.
it reflects back to them, and they feel a little bit nervous. They want to be able to come in and tell you whatever they need to tell you. And I've had people tell me all sorts of things, from very, very bad things to things that they think are bad but aren't bad. And you say, okay, so that's what happened, okay? And we'll find a way of navigating that. And you have to be that sort of person and not judge people for what they've done, because they've done it. You can't, it's too late, it's done.
Yeah.
How do we address it? And my job is to help you do that. If you do that well, people like you. If you don't, if you judge them, or if you exhibit stress, that, behind the scenes there's stress, but it's a certain type of person, I think, who can do this. You keep it inside. I'm sure it's bad for your health also.
Yeah. No, it's splendid. Thank you. It's fantastic. All right. Look, you've worked with governments, global companies with royalties. So, as a probably side note, James' main focus, I think, in terms of the client base is Saudi, right, royal families and state-owned entities, Middle Eastern companies, right, including Qatar. So you're exposed to them. It's a huge thing. It's a complicated, sophisticated, lots of pressure. So what's the most unexpected culture lesson you've learned as a lawyer while working, being exposed to?
Western lawyers in particular, and it's not just in the Middle East, it's also in other countries. I do a lot of work for the Malaysian government also, although they're slightly better than the GCC countries. Western lawyers tend to be very transactional.
Yeah.
So they want to come in and say, I have this problem, give me your answer, and then we move on.
Yeah.
When you are dealing with people, particularly senior people, in Middle Eastern countries in particular, it is about patience. And you can never begin a meeting by saying, I've got 30 minutes, we're here to do this.
All right.
So the meeting begins with a discussion about them, a discussion about something that's going on in their country or they're dealing with in the press, a discussion about issues that they might face, problems that they might have that are not related at all to what you're there for.
Yeah.
I once had a very senior Saudi sheikh summon me to come to Jeddah, where he had his majlis at that time. And he rang me in London and said, I need you to come. So I couldn't, my Iqamah at that time, my visa had expired. He said, go down to the Saudi embassy or have the secretary go down with your passport. And it was a Friday, so the Saudi embassy was closed. Someone will ring you. Someone rang. I sent my secretary down. I got a visa on the spot without even really applying. And she got it. I didn't even go. And then I was on a flight there that night, overnight to Jeddah. I met him in his majlis. We sat down, we had tea for maybe 2 hours. Then we had lunch. All of his sons came, and lunch went for another 4 or 5 hours. We talked about Al-Qaeda, we talked about all sorts of things that he was interested in. And at the end of the day, it was coming to 5 o'clock. I was on a flight back to London because this was Christmas Eve. I needed to be home for Christmas Day for my own family. I think this was important. And he said, look, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. I've got this problem on this thing. My in-house lawyer's over there. He'll tell you about it, but can you just deal with that for me? And a Western lawyer is not going to understand that you're with this guy for 10 hours.
Yeah.
You don't know why, but you can't be impatient, and you just have to enjoy his company. And then he's brought you there for a reason. It will be revealed to you.
Yeah.
And if you have that, and I've had lots and lots of meetings where they've summoned me at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you have to be able to just go, and sometimes then they're not there. But the main thing is patience, and that's pretty broad. I mean, even a normal thing, you're going to have that even in Malaysia, you have you can't go straight to the point. Whereas in New York, or with my private equity clients, it's bang, bang, bang. Yeah. That world is not like that.
Right.
And you have to have that, and you have to have it genuinely. And I think I have that.
Excellent. Thank you, James. What is the oldest or most extravagant legal meeting setting you've ever been in? Gold-plated boardrooms or desert tents, I don't know, something fancy, exotic?
I've had lots of meetings I've had meetings on private yachts. I've had meetings on in all the leading hotels, but I've had meetings where they've had sort of very high-profile entertainers just paid to sing, and shockingly so. I've gone to meetings. I used to go to the FII every year, Future Investment Initiative. They invited me in Saudi Arabia, and that sort of, it's like Davos. They call it Davos in the desert. And you go, and it's invitation only, and it's the world's billionaires. And if you think that person looks like Sergey Brin, it's Sergey Brin. If you sit down and you don't know, I sat down once next to someone I didn't know who he was, and I had made the mistake of asking. He was the Prime Minister of France, which is not the President of France, but exists at that time. And this was years ago. That universe is, and I was for 4 or 5 years. They had me go to that. You'll be at the urinal in the bathroom, and there'll be the CEO of Blackstone next to you, and that's kind of interesting, actually. But I've been in every bizarre situation, from secret places that don't exist to mega yachts to these sorts of things where the entertainment is, as I just mentioned earlier, Gloria Gaynor or Sting or someone, and it really is. They're just doing the coffee break, and you're surrounded by, the people that you could only see on the magazines, and they're all normal people. They're a little bit weird, but they're all relatively they're just human beings. So, but I've been very lucky.
Oh, impressive. So you, at the same time, it's clear that's the entertaining part. So you meet different people, like singers, CEOs, etc. But being exposed to Middle East, it's a bit sensitive. As you said, the culture, mentality. How do you balance discretion, diplomacy, and advocacy in such high-profile environments?
Well, normally they're there to talk to me about a commercial problem, which is unrelated to whatever other issues they might have in the public domain. So, if you're got an issue with the default by your counterparty and you want to sue them, or there's other issues, that's fine. I don't need to express any opinion on anything else because I'm not expected to, nor am I asked to. Obviously, you do have to be culturally sensitive to certain topics, but very rarely do they ever arise. On occasion, I've dealt with issues around worker deaths, for example, and allegations about mistreatment from various quongos and other international bodies for people, and on occasion that has been an issue where I've done some advice for governments on how they should deal with those issues when they've got not just public relations perceptions, but problems with how they are treating workers. It's never really them, and I don't want to go through things. Actually, usually the contract labour companies, which are subcontracted to the contractors, they're actually the core problem in the enforcement of the laws, which actually are not themselves. That's usually the issue that to be enforced better. So you've just got to be sensitive to those sorts of things, and it's been evolving. So we had the blockade of Qatar with Saudi Arabia and the issues with Qatar and Abu Dhabi, and I acted for all three countries during the time when they were all hating each other. But that was because I knew not to mention any of the others to the others, and they knew that was what the deal was, and they all trusted me. So actually navigating that is easy. You just also don't bring, you're the pen. You're not the writer, if you're the way I like to say that. So I'm here to advocate your story, and I will make sure the story is correct, but I'm not writing the story.
Right.
And so I don't impose my own views on that. And if they do silly things, some clients I'm very, very close to, and I can express perhaps more openly views, but there's always a diplomatic thing. You've also got to remember, a lot of these people have never experienced rudeness or anything other than admiration and subservience in some respects. So you have to be truthful, and they value truthfulness more than really anything. If you can tell them the truth, most people are trying to avoid that because they don't know whether it could upset them. But you've got to tell them the truth in a way that is diplomatic. And that is a differentiator. Because a lot of even lawyers will say, yes, Your Excellency or Your Royal Highness, whatever, depending on who you're dealing with, you've got a fantastic case. Whereas I will say, you might have a case, here are the problems, I could do something for you, I don't know. If people are telling you you have a good case, don't believe them, they're not telling you the truth. And that, you would think that would be bad, but that's actually very good. Because they'll then say, hang on, is that true? And then you build a trust relationship that is very strong.
And listen, it's a fantastic, and I especially like the statement of yours when you said lawyers are pen rather than writer.
Yes.
But I would agree, and at the same time, allow me to disagree. This conversation is it's not about me really. It's about you, your thoughts and insights, sharing. But just here, it's just unfortunately sometimes, probably in my market back in Uzbekistan, some of the lawyers take similar approach, and especially in banking finance sector, the banks, in terms of to secure the transaction, they come up with some sophisticated English law governed and structured propositions in order to structure the deal and security package, but which not necessarily or all the time, unfortunately, works under Uzbek law. And here we see the role of the lawyer, their local counsel, to step in and manage the expectation and educate them at some part, right? Rather than simply implementing what their clients say about it. And then we came across with those situations where, unfortunately, they've been implemented, insisted by the lenders because of the lack of bargaining power from the borrower side or unequal bargaining power. And then it turns to precedent, and the next subsequent transactions, the local counsel's argument and lender's argument, well, it wasn't previous precedents, and this deal should follow the similar precedent. And it gets more and more difficult really to get rid of the wrong precedent, I should say. So, but yeah, I really like this statement, So, pen, not a writer.
In your example, if I'm assuming you're talking about a security package, if it's a security package, it's either perfect or imperfect. And if it's imperfect, it won't be able to be enforced. And that will only change when it's tested legally.
Yes.
Also, the law firm that has come up with this structure will have given enforceability and execution opinions for the benefit of the lenders. And so it's the law firm that ultimately would be exposed to some liability if the security was imperfect. But unfortunately, this is another thing I see, which I make a good living at actually, is this concept of cultural imperialism, if you like. I don't mean it in the broad way, but I mean it in the way that lawyers from the UK or lawyers from the United States are often in-house in other third countries because they've somehow ended up there. There seems to be a lot of people. And they think, this is the same as New York, or this is the same as London. And there is local laws, but who knows what they say. Let's just ignore that. You can't do that. If you do that and it goes bad, someone like me will come along and unpick it and find those holes along with the local council, and then we'll press really hard and it will all fall apart. And so you have to, from day one, if you're in a jurisdiction you're not familiar with, I will usually get a lawyer from a local firm and sit down with them, sometimes for 10 hours, sometimes for days, until I really understand what the issues are. And I'll question them, and I want to see the actual underlying documents. I'm not saying I want to become that, but I do need to understand. And a lot of people don't do that. They say, here's the precedent for taking security in any CIS country. We're just doing that. And that is just wrong.
Okay. I personally wish we would have the lenders would engage lawyers more like you, James. In Uzbekistan, that would make our life easier and streamline the negotiations. So next, when you prepare for arbitration, do you think more like a chess player or poker player?
It has to be chess because, well, it's kind of a bit of both. Chess, obviously, well, no, both have elements of looking at what your opponents do. I like to look. That's why I hate the internet hearings we did during COVID. I like to see what's happening on the other side of the room when a witness answers a particular question. If they're running around and they're flying at their folders, you know, I'm going in a good direction. I need to keep going that way. But you didn't see that really on Zoom, so that was a problem. So you do watch them, but actually, what you're really looking to do in the conduct of a case theory or case strategy, you're trying to deal with problems before they are presented, and you're trying to navigate your way through that. He will do that, we will do that. chess or poker really comes down to cross-examination more than broad case strategy, because I think case strategy is a case strategy. It's very rare a case changes once the pleadings are finalised. So once you say the case, reply and rejoinder are done. This is what we say as a matter of law. That's what we say. But during cross-examination, you have to have a whole plan, but you can't slavishly do it. I've seen people who write out their whole cross-examination and they're reading it, and if the witness gives an answer that they don't, particularly if they give an answer that can't be right and they haven't thought of within their tree, they often freeze and they don't know what to do. You have to be very relaxed. You have to be able to, you have to have thought about everything. You have to know the documents more than they do. And it's really, we're going for broad markers along my journey. But if you want to go over there, and I can control it a little bit, it might lead to something interesting. Well, let's have a gentle look. You've got to be careful, you've got to judge it the right way. But you have to be able to not be completely, because it doesn't work that way. So that is kind of chess. I'm thinking about, if we do this, what are your options? A, B, C, but often it'll be D. You didn't think about it because it's impossible or it's a lie or whatever it is. And then you circle back and fix that. So I'd say chess is more about it, because certainly for examination, you're thinking through the whole story of their statement. You're thinking through each step, what they might say, what they could say, and what will happen and how that will lead to where you want to get them to in terms of admission. But as a case strategy, it's also probably the same. But you're always looking at the person on the other side to see. So that, in that respect, it's a little bit like playing the man and the case.
Well, excellent. And being as a litigator and arbitration lawyer, do you believe in a big speech moment, or is it about details and paper trail?
It's always about details and paper trail. We don't have jury trials in this country, except for in criminal matters. And even then, I don't think it's about, I don't do criminal work, but I don't think it's about, yes, I did it in the box. You just don't get that. You do sometimes get nice admissions in cross-examination in civil matters, in arbitrations and in court, but that's less rare. Normally you just get nothing, or the impossible, the statement of the impossible. So a witness will say, I was in this meeting, and then you say, well, okay, here is your disclosed calendar, and it says that this meeting was in this country and you were there. Yes, here's your calendar. It says that you were in Paris that day. Were you in Paris that day? I don't know. I don't think I was. I think I was in that meeting. So you were in that meeting, you remember? Yes. You weren't in Paris? No. Okay. So here are the tickets that you bought for your trip to Paris. Did you buy them? Someone did. Okay, but they're tickets to Paris with your name on them. Agree with that? Yes. So, but you still say you were in that meeting, not in Paris. I don't remember if I was in Paris, but I was definitely in that meeting. Okay, so you're in that meeting. These tickets were your name. You don't know. Okay, here is your expense claim for the hotel that you were staying in Paris on the same day of the meeting. Were you in that meeting, or were you in Paris? I was in that meeting. So but you're also in Paris. Well, this says you're in Paris. You agree? Yes. So you were in Paris and in the meeting on the other side of the world at the same time. Is that your? No, I was in the meeting, but you were also in Paris. Yes. I have no more questions.
Okay.
That's what you might. That's
right.
That's the gold you might get.
Yeah.
And you don't press, and you've got to be gentle. But that's gold. So actually. You don't have a speech moment, and it's always about the stuff. When I write you a letter, a formal letter, it's never going to have anything interesting in it. When you write something to your colleague behind the scenes, that's going to be interesting. When you do WhatsApps, they're my favourite thing to get access to. People think WhatsApps are somehow exempt from everything. They are not. All of the bad stuff is in the WhatsApps. All the bad stuff is in the internal stuff. All the bad stuff is getting the reports, the internal reports on the project done by someone in their organisation, which will say, we did this wrong and that wrong. That's not legally privileged unless it was prepared by a lawyer. I want that. The devil is always in the detail. It's never thematic. Thematic cases can lead to great miscarriages of justice, because it might look one way, but the truth is some other way. And I like to think of it like this. In television detective shows, you ever seen this, probably shows my age, the show Columbo. You know Columbo? Yes. Old raincoat. Yes. Columbo would say all these nice things to people. He was this funny little man. And then he'd leave the room, and he'd always and he'd grab his ear and he'd turn around and say, by the way, that book wasn't there on the table that day, was it? And of course that is that detail which proves that person was not doing what they say that they did, but it seems innocuous. cases are like that. Truth is in the details, the details, the details. Everything thematic might look nice, might sound good, but the truth is usually hidden because someone doesn't really want you to see it. So finding that, and that is the best tool. Once you have the truth, the objective truth, not the, what does Mr. Trump say, the alternative truth or whatever he says, if you find the actual truth, you're pretty much unbeatable.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, and what would be one myth about international arbitration that you would love to bust once and for all?
It is neither less expensive nor more efficient than court litigation. In fact, it's probably often more expensive because of the nature of the process, because arbitrators are reluctant to be procedurally tough because they're worried about their awards being appealed. And then you have an enforcement phase. And also because of a lack of procedural rigour and a fear of being done for perjury, witnesses routinely lie, documents routinely are destroyed. Arbitral tribunals feel constrained about making orders around those issues where they wouldn't if they were sitting in court. And so parties behave in a much less honest way, including advocates in my experience. And so it takes a long time to get through that. Whereas in court, if a party forged a document and counsel presented it and was shown to be forged, firstly, that wouldn't happen because, but secondly, that person would be subject to disciplinary proceedings if not struck off, if not arrested. So it's the problem with arbitration is its absence of formal rules of conduct and the enforcement of those rules of conduct. And as a result, and the mix of cultures.
Yeah.
So some people coach witnesses, American lawyers coach witnesses. I can't do that, I'm ethically constrained. I actually think it's better not to. But they coach their witnesses. They talk to their witnesses in breaks. I sequester mine. I'm not talking to the person who I'm not supposed to be talking to. Now, he's not supposed to be talking to the witness. I'm posting in the middle of it, but they can try and do that. And in arbitration, it's open for everyone. So you're dealing with guerrilla warfare in a no rules really environment with a referee that doesn't really have much power. And so the truth is even more important, but it takes longer to get to it because people are not afraid of lying. People are not afraid of forging or destroying documents. People are not afraid of all the things that if they did in a court, when they're sworn in, brought in, and there's the bailiffs and they know that there's perjury and they could be done for that. That makes people, not always, but often more honest and is faster. So arbitration not faster. It's not, and it's certainly not less expensive. Certainly not less expensive, more expensive. But it's all we've got in many international disputes for enforceability reasons. So we're stuck with it.
Excellent, thank you. So probably a few questions would require quite short answers. Something related to personal and unexpected question section. So lawyers are often portrayed as either sharks or saints. What would your client say you are?
But probably a saint with a machine gun.
Even worse than a shark. Okay.
No, sharks attack people for no reason.
So you say the machine gun's for defense. Okay. Do you have a guilty pleasure that keeps you sane between high stakes hearings? Netflix or boxing?
No, well, just I spend a lot of time in the countryside. I like reading and being in the countryside and walking and shooting and things like that. So just country pursuits.
Quite boring.
Well, pretty boring. I mean, a lot of people have much more weird peccadillos they do with these horses in very strange ways. I don't have the energy for that.
No, fair enough. If you weren't a lawyer, you would be...
I would probably either be a writer or an academic. In both cases, I would probably be considerably less well off than I am now.
Yeah. Unfortunately. Yeah, I noticed that you published several articles. So are they more like practical law review type of articles, or are they more scholarly academic articles?
I've written in both industry journals and in refereed academic publications in all over the world, really, and some books or some chapters in books. So they're both. I mean, when something is really interesting, I will maybe do something more in national construction law review or something a bit more academic. But often other points where they're more general. They might be for an industry publication or for global arbitration review or something like that. So both. I mean, the theme is they're all law. And whilst I'd like to write something not law, no one would really read that. So it has to be law.
Okay, got it. So now, why don't we give a few advice to young generation of lawyers, students, or just who just graduated and started? What advice would you give to law students in emerging markets like in Uzbekistan, who dream of making it on the global stage?
Well, you need to get international experience, and you need to develop your niche. You have a niche, and that niche would be you've got linguistic abilities that other people don't have. You've got experience of a market that you could be stand out in pretty quickly by being the best person in your area in that market, by two international standards in a particular niche area. Find out what that is. All I ever did, the only reason I ever was successful, is I focused on places where other people, in terms of Western lawyers, really didn't go. So when I first went to Saudi Arabia, the only people there were people who were 3 times bankrupted, struck off, or on their 8th divorce. And it was a gallery. This was like 2001. It was the Western lawyers were all basically crazy. And to turn up and say, "I'm not crazy. You're the only girl at the ball. I mean, it's you're not crazy. That is amazing. I want you." And so it didn't take much, and I did that in a number of countries around the world. I was in when they were just developing. I mean, Qatar's gas was. When I first went to Qatar, there was 1 hotel in the whole. I mean, and so you're there, and they're like, you're like normal. So yes, we definitely want to work with you. So try and be something do something other people are not doing, and that's true of any industry, but law in particular. And that can be geography, it can be area of practice. You need to get good English skills. You need to get international experience. You can get that by working on cases involving where you are now, and then you can build on that around it. But I think international experience is really important. I think you want people to see you as the gateway out and in. So you're effectively the door. International companies can say, "I like Shukrat because I can deal with him like he was just a normal partner in a firm in London or New York. So he speaks the same language." Not language, although you do, but I mean, he thinks the same way. I can say, "This is what I'm thinking." He can say, "I get that for these reasons, but it doesn't work that way here because of that." And explain it to me in a way that I'll understand. Very often, local counsel won't be able to do that well. They'll say, "Well, that's what it is." And then also for corporates and entities going out, I like to say quite often, I'm sort of not the acceptable face, but I'm sort of their face in lots of ways when they go out to do things, because they don't know how to deal with certain situations but I do, because I work in probably 50 countries, so I know how to navigate that. And so you're able to go and manage them because you know them, and also manage the other side because you know the other side. And if you are that door, there aren't many people that really are operating that way. They're one or the other. They're really good, but they think like they're in New York. They're really good, but they think that they're in their own country, whatever country that is, or anywhere in the world. And just be someone that can be the gateway or the bridge. You are really standing out in a way that's material. But that's interesting. But the real key is find an area of law that no one else is doing, that is likely to generate significant work. It might appear boring. It's probably less boring than you think. Become the person who is the best person at that thing. And then your pathway is just better.
Brilliant. That's valid points. Thank you. It's very fantastic. I'm sure young students and young lawyers would find it quite helpful. Thank you very much. And if you could go back and give to your 25-year-old self piece of advice, what would it be other than just buy Bitcoin?
Yes, that's a missed opportunity. But I'd probably take care of health more than I have. I used to think, and I used to tell clients this: if your lawyer looks really well and healthy, you have the wrong lawyer. And I would say that with all seriousness, because I used to have the view that people that spent time every day at the gym doing their stuff or whatever, how could you ever have that time? I don't have that time.
Ah.
I'm living and breathing
Mm-hmm.
all the time I'm awake,
Mm-hmm.
doing what I need to do for the people that pay me, my clients. And how can you deal with the stress that you're going to be under doing that properly, where you really care, and have time to go and do all this stuff? I think that was wrong. I think that there are times when you have to be like that, but I have always just been, I've ignored elements of that. I travel so much, you get time zone differences all the time. I'm eating in hotels for hearings in other countries and meetings all the time, and that's not good. And I haven't really thought about that. I have never really thought that was important. I'm like, well, I'm still going, so that's fine. But I think I could have been more careful about choosing what to eat and what to get more exercise as I was coming through. I was absolutely singularly focused on, I have to eat something now, just room service, whatever, and I'm continuing. And I didn't even half the time even know what I was putting in my mouth. It's like, this is a sandwich, okay. I just need something to eat to keep me, that's fine. And that was, and I used to think it was the right way to do it. I don't think that anymore. I think that, yes, I don't think you should find time which you don't have, or take time from things you need to do to go and spend hours in the gym. But I do think you can make sensible choices. And I think many lawyers who are very committed have fallen into the trap that I had, which is it's not, not physically good for you. But other people, but so there's got to be a middle ground. For me, when you're young, yes, work very, very hard. Work very, very hard. You have to. This is literally like a trade. The more hours you do, the better you have it. The 10,000 hours theory about mastering it. It's more like 50,000 hours to be a decent lawyer. So you really have to do that, but you can't ignore the fact that you're also alive, and to do your job well, you have to be healthy. And I haven't, fortunately, suffered anything myself, but I could definitely be much healthier. And I try, but then I fall back into old ways of just working and eating garbage, and because I'm just constantly on the move. And sleep, you need to sleep. I probably don't sleep. I probably sleep 4 hours a night, maybe 5. And you should be sleeping more, because sleep is really, really important. And that's not just some gimmick. I know it is. I have a reservoir of tiredness. If I sit on a plane, I close my eyes and I have time, I'll fall asleep instantly. Instantly. And before takeoff, I'll sleep through takeoff. I once got to a plane in Tokyo. I fell asleep before they took off, and they woke me up as they were coming into Heathrow. And the steward said that I've never seen anyone do that. You've been asleep for like 12 hours or 13 hours. So that's because I don't sleep enough. Sleep, healthy choices about food will take you a long way.
Excellent, thank you. But in your experience, what distinguishes great lawyer from good one?
It's not about being smart, because well, you have to be above average. I think it's about your willingness to. It's partially time. How committed are you? Is this the most important thing that you are doing? Are you absolutely committed to this? You will find a way if there is a way. You have to be that person if you want to be successful. The successful people work the hardest. There are a lot of very smart people that are not very good because they're lazy and they miss the details. They might be very smart, but it doesn't help them. So you have to be, I think, you have to be clever. You can't be an idiot. But you don't have to be Einstein. You do have to be extremely disciplined about your work, and you need to be extremely focused on your work. A good lawyer is someone, certainly in disputes, who is able to get the truth from their own client before it hurts them. So they have to trust you. All over the material. If you own the material more better than your opponent, so you know everything about all the documents and all the facts, you have an advantage immediately. You have to be willing to be firm and aggressive when it's technically helpful, and not pointlessly. And you need to be able to do that. Some people don't like that. Some people don't like telling witnesses that they were lying. But that's your job. And you don't have to do it in a way that's particularly offensive and say, I've seen some people even apologise. I'm going, sorry, but I have to do this, putting to you that this is not true. This is a forged document. You don't have to apologise, but you have to be willing to do that. So you have to be a little bit able to be aggressive, you have to work prodigiously hard. This is a work job. If you are working harder than the other guy, you will have an advantage. Clients have to trust you. Judges and arbitrators have to trust you. So who are the best lawyers? Not the suits characters who lie about stuff and don't seem to do any work. The people that are at the top of this profession are people that work prodigiously hard, that judges and arbitrators trust because they do not mislead people. And people that clients trust, and people that get the truth first and don't just take what their client tells them is the truth. On day one, almost always, they will not tell you the truth. You need to get that truth from them before it goes into any court or arbitration process. A lot of lawyers don't do that. You do all those steps, you'll be a good lawyer. And a great lawyer probably has something extra, which is they're pushing envelopes and they're thinking about things which could be presented in a different way, and they're not afraid to try them. From an argument perspective, this statute says that, but it could be interpreted to say that. I think there's a good reason for it to be interpreted that way. This is why. You're mostly arguing then in this country in the Supreme Court, where they're changing laws. Those people are very, very bright, but they're also willing to take risks. So a little bit of risk taking as well. But you don't need to be a great lawyer to have a good career. You need to be a decent lawyer. In fact, many lawyers have good careers who are just decent lawyers. It's a good profession, but for people who want to go into it, you need to understand that it's not suits. It's not like that. It's not Ally McBeal or any of the television show that you can pick. It is mostly very long hours by yourself in rooms filled with paper or computer documents, depending on where you're working, and working through them with attention and focus on detail. And yes, it has glamorous elements, but ultimately, you're no different from a baker or a plumber or any other tradesman. You are doing a job which is a trade, as it used to be. You used to not go to university to do law. You read law originally for the bar. You didn't do it at university. So it's like that, but it can be hugely rewarding. You do have social respect in lots of ways. You do get to be, if you're a bit of an egotist, it's fantastic. You get to, if you're an advocate, you get to sit in a room with 30 people and talk all day, and they have to listen to you. So I think it's a good career.
Fantastic. So are you telling us that suits is BS?
I'm telling you that elements of it definitely is, and I've seen people that emulate that. In fact, I've often referred to my opponents as the cast of suits in certain cases, and that's problematic. So they will come in and they'll say something that's not true, and I'll immediately pick it up because I know the documents better than they do. And then they don't know what to do, and they just move on with other lies. I see that from time to time. This is a hard work job. It's Suits. The only character of Suits that is even close to reality is the Lewis Litt character. There are plenty of angry lawyers who are dissatisfied with their life and angry with the world, but he's the only one in that firm that seems to work hard. And he is the most realistic presentation of what a lawyer really is. The rest of them are just models with suits on.
So kudos to Rick Hoffman, was he? Rick Hoffman for amazing acting skills. So look, in fact, on Saturday I traveled to Oxford last week, met with my former student, and she's doing now LLM, master's degree in law and finance. And I just asked her, what's your takeaway? So you're almost finishing the program, and among the students, that believed to be exceptional, and said, no, there are no geniuses really. It's just those who are succeeding, they're doing 10 times more work than the normally or ordinary students do. So that makes them special. But that's their approach, work ethics, but nothing really extraordinary. So that's I like the answer. So thank you very much. So we're coming close to an end, and two more questions on legacy and impact, James. What's the one case or client that changed you professionally or personally?
Professionally, probably I've been acting for Qatar Foundation in a case involving a hospital in Qatar, Central Hospital, as public record. in a series of international arbitrations and high court matters over the last 12 years. That has been, for me, we've been very lucky. We've succeeded on liability. Quantum is yet to be awarded, but we've succeeded on liability, so our termination was valid and the client won, so that's good. But that changed me in the sense that it was a monstrous multi-billion-dollar case, very hard fought. The other side changed law firms on no less than three or four occasions. They changed leading advocates from, there were 2 silks that changed, there were partners that were changed from other law firms, other whole firms that were changed. They even brought in, at one point, eminent arbitrators like Jan Paulson again for part of their case to try and improve their position, but it didn't work. And it was brutal. It was trench warfare. There were, I was followed by some sort of a hit squad at one point, as were members of the tribunal. It was about as intense a matter as you could imagine, where people are following you around and all sorts of things. And it impacted on how I view these big cases and how I would do them in the future, maybe slightly differently in some elements. But it showed me the bad parts of arbitration and the really good parts of arbitration. And I think, certainly for my career, it is, for the last more than a decade, it has been sort of more than half of my time. And that changes you in lots of ways. I've been in sitting days where we've actually had hearings more than a year, so more than 365 sitting days, which is very unusual. But I've seen really good advocacy. I've seen really bad advocacy. I've seen all of it in this enterprise, and it changed me. It didn't change me. It gave me a new experience in the sense of I'd done very big cases before, but nothing with this amount of animus, nothing with this amount of shenanigans with people, with witnesses dying, members of the tribunal stepping down. It had every kind of aha moment you could imagine, and we've come through it all very well actually. So, but it put me through the ringer. But I'd been through a lot of ringers before that. This was just kind of drawing it all together. So that's probably it. And everyone has, if you're lucky, you get a couple of these in your career, monster cases that are really very high profile and run for a long time. And they're very, very instructive. Because you get to see so much, and you get to see so many different elements, and every issue that you'd ever learnt about is raised at some point or happens, and you have to deal with it, and it sort of just draws together everything in a really, really nice way. And but it's also bitter, hard, tiring.
Okay. Yeah, got it. Yeah. Last question, James. How do you want to be remembered? As a brilliant tactician, mentor, or the guy who once bit Alice or Scadden in a record time?
I would like to be remembered as someone that it was. I've always been a mentor to many people that have worked for me throughout the years, and many of my former trainees and partners at city firms and national firms now, and I still am a mentor for many of those people. I'd like to be remembered for someone who was an ethical lawyer, but who was a very, very effective lawyer, and who didn't fall into many of the traps that other people do. And if I say something, generally, a tribunal will follow me, and they won't doubt that it's not untrue. I want to be remembered. That's very important to keep. I also want to be able to not do things that I think are in any way questionable. So you've got to be that person, but you've also got to be prodigiously hardworking, completely own the details. So a good mentor to people, someone who's ethical, but also in contrast, where people don't think that those two things sit together. I'm somewhat of an anomaly in that I have that reputation, but also I have been enormously successful. So you don't have to be Harvey Specter to be successful. You can be, you might have to work a lot harder than Harvey to be more successful, but you can do that, and I think testimony to that.
Brilliant. Thank you. So, thank you. I think that this is it. And now, over the last, how many minutes? So we're almost, 45 minutes we've been
Yes,
through this.
no, it
Yes.
was a long.
That's quite long. Yeah. Now, I was reading reviews, comments, feedbacks about you by reputable rankings like Chambers, etc. That were saying, James, everybody knows him, rulers and governments trust him, complicated deals, etc. Now, I realize why and what it takes and what kind of caliber person you should be. So it was actually fabulous exposure to you, to your personality, and some of the insights of yours that you shared. Thank you very much.
Well, no, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Excellent.